So we're going to go ahead and give everybody another minute to join, and then we will get started. All right, so hello everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar on the updated requirements of the ISO 27001-2022 standard. Just to let everybody know, just take a note, this is being recorded. All attendees following this webinar will receive an email that will have a link to the recording along with a copy of the presentation. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can go ahead and put them in the question box, and we will get to those at the end. So let's get started. So my name is Katie Warlick, and I am the Regional Sales Manager for Information Security for North America for SGS. I've got about 10 years experience in the TIC and information security industry. But most importantly, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Ravi Jagannathan. So Ravi is our North America Product Manager for Information Security, Privacy, Information Technology, Business Continuity, and Cybersecurity, along with technical accreditation. So he just has a few responsibilities here. Dr. Ravi has over 27 years experience in the IT certification industry. He has also completed over 1,000 third-party audits against various international standards. To give you a brief history of SGS, so from the beginning in 1878 as a grain inspection house in France, SGS has grown to be the world's leading testing, inspection, and certification company. So we are number one. Our 98,000 employees operate a network of 2,650 offices and laboratories across the world. We do have 7 focus areas. Those 7 focus areas are strategically aligned with our global megatrends affecting society today. So those 7 focus areas are connectivity and products, digital innovation, health and nutrition, industries and environment, knowledge, which is our group focused on ISO and process certifications, natural resources, and sustainability. To give you just a brief overview of our information security solutions, as we all know, we do certification to ISO 27001, the Information Security Management System, along with some of those piggyback standards around cloud security controls for cloud services, around protection of PII and public clouds acting as PII processors. Another growing standard that we're seeing in the US and internationally is ISO 27701, which is the Privacy Information Management System. We do audits to business continuity, information technology, supply chain. If anybody is dealing with AI, we will be doing audits to a newer standard called ISO 42001, which is the Artificial Intelligence Management System. Also, if anybody on this call has to deal with GDPR compliance, we do have the Euro Privacy certification that ultimately evaluates the compliance to the GDPR requirements. What's interesting about this certification is that if you are a candidate outside of the EU, so if you're in the US, but you need to have a Euro Privacy certification to demonstrate GDPR compliance, in order to apply, you must have an affiliate in the EU processing data in the EU as well. The Euro Privacy standard can be combined with 27001 and 27701. So any questions about that, put it in the chat box and we can talk to you later on. So today we are going to go over a brief history of ISO 27001, megatrends, supplier risk assessments, structure of the ISO 27001 management system, the key changes around Annex A, new controls, 27002. What's probably most important for people here is the transition period and timelines, training services, and then we'll hop into Q&A at the end. Ravi, I'll pass this off to you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, everybody, for joining the call. Just wanted to start off my part of the spiel with a brief history of ISO 27001. Just the important thing for you guys to note is that it has evolved over the years since 1995, and we're sitting at the 2022 version of it. So I just wanted to mention that it was actually initiated back in 1995 with the DTI in the UK government and published as a British standards standard number 7799 to manage and improve an organization's security of information and data. It became a formal ISO standard back in 2005, which is when I got involved with this as well. And it transitioned 2 times after that. It transitioned once in 2013 and then again in 2022. So some of the key changes that were initiated in the 2022 standard will be, of course, the subject of this webinar that we'll present to you. Any questions about that, please put it in the chat. We're going to take a quick poll here. If you guys would take a few minutes, 30 seconds to answer the poll, that'd be great. So we'll wait about 30 seconds and then move on.
All right, results.
Wonderful. Shall we move on?
44.4%. Okay.
Excellent. So we're talking about megatrends. Megatrends is a term that SGS uses in various parts of their system and tries to focus on strategically alignment with global megatrends. And SGS offerings support megatrends. And as you can see there are quite a few of these, and Katie mentioned artificial intelligence. This is becoming increasingly influential. It's going to impact every aspect of our life over the next 10 years. And SGS is looking to offer 42001 ISO certification. And also, I'm expecting to see that there will be a big growth in expert systems. Expert systems take the role of the individual doing something and automating that. Okay. So that's, again, something that we're going to see a huge drive in that direction. Possibly, there may be an expert system that does some form of auditing for companies like SGS. Cybersecurity, cyber attacks continue to increase and evolve in sophistication. And this has been recognized quite a bit internally. And also cybersecurity is now part of the new name for the 27001 standard 2022. And we have also seen a great deal of interest from other schemes like CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification with the Department of Defense, 200,000 suppliers, which is highly NIST-based. And there is some reciprocity within that scheme for ISO 27001 2022 certification that could be used to get some reciprocity, possibly, okay, from the Department of Defense. Supply chain assurance is becoming increasingly important. And we are just starting to initiate ISO 28000 within SGS North America. And depending on how that takes shape, we'll address it as comprehensively as we can. Cloud security, again, fundamental. 50% of corporate data in the cloud, according to Statista. And we have a number of offerings here relating to that, including ISO 27017 which demonstrates cloud security to users. And we also have CSA Star, which is the gold standard for cloud security providers. Data privacy becoming more and more important over the years. And we have ISO 27701 and 27018 to support that. And the differences and correlations between those two standards would probably be topic for another webinar in its own right. So back over to you, Katie.
Okay. So these have been very fun lately. So SGS is a supplier, and everyone on this call is ultimately a supplier to a customer. And so from my current experience and pain points, and from pain points I've also heard from customers, you'll see that supply chain risk assessments and questionnaires are getting more detailed and stringent across all industries and taking up a whole bunch of resource time to complete. What we're seeing is very lengthy declarations, so validation of ownership of the company, of the leadership, the applications used, what certifications and audit programs do you have, IT organization structure, tons of questions around this. Descriptions on how data is protected. So again, certifications, policy, practices, we're being asked hiring policies and details on background checks, even on subcontractors. We're also seeing a lot of business continuity objectives. So around outage, backup, and recovery time details. People want to see the copy of or a description of your business continuity plan. And so basically the point to what I am saying is that ISO certifications, if you put them in place, they're going to reduce the administrative supply chain questionnaire process, but also most importantly, ensure to your customers that you're a trusted partner to work with. And so this is something that we're growing internally as well, so that we don't have to answer as many in-depth questions on behalf of ourselves. All right, Robbie, passing this back off to you.
All right, thanks, Katie.
Hang on, we've got a poll.
All right.
Let me go back. Are you concerned about privacy information management, privacy requirements such as GDPR, US state-by-state requirements, and/or cloud security? So we'll give everybody about 15 seconds to answer that and get excited for the results. All right. Oh, it looks, I see it here. All right, 8, 11, 20% submitted. Let's see. All right, getting closer. Come on, team. All right, let's take a look. All right, so it looks like one of the biggest concerns are around cloud security. That sounds about right. Okay. All right, Robbie, passing it back off to you to talk about the transition in the standard.
All right, thank you, Katie, again. So some of the unique features of 27001 standard takes a top-down risk-centric approach, starting from the strategic direction of the organization and its contextual setting, adopting a PDCA approach to developing and managing and improving the ISMS, then leading to a risk assessment. And you can select from a suite of 93 security controls that are offered to you in Annex A of the standard. And basically what this is all about business assurance, okay? So basically the ISMS is there to support the business and not as an add-on or a bolt-on, okay? So we take that top-down approach, starting from strategic direction and then managing improvement going back up from the bottom. It is technology neutral, not prescriptive, and it doesn't really specify any specific technologies. So it doesn't say that you must use a tool for vulnerability scans. It doesn't say anything about specific tools, like you might want to use Nessus or Qualys or whatever you like. It's really up to you, so long as you meet the requirements of the standard, which are in pretty specific terms, what at the same time not technology centric. It again doesn't say anything about the actual technologies, whether you use signature based or anomaly based or AI based detection systems for incidents and intrusions. It's really up to you to interpret the requirement and meet the requirements in a way that makes the most sense to your business. It is based on Annex XL. Therefore, the titles of clauses 4 through 10 are the same as most of the other standards. Have all now transitioned to Annex XL, and that facilitates the implementation of integrated audits when you're combining multiple standards during one assessment or one audit. We used to have 114 security controls in the 2013 standard, across 14 domains. And now we have 93 security controls in four domains. Okay. And there are endemic requirements for security within each control. And it is further expanded and developed within the ISO 27002 standard, which offers a wealth of guidance in implementing the security controls. So you are certainly encouraged to reference that particular document. SGS audits. Now the standard also, another important thing that has happened is that it's become highly process centric. So a process approach is now visible throughout the standard, and SGS audits will reflect that as we go forward. Okay. And finally, the alignment with NIST is not clear as yet. So there is very little reference to NIST documentation being an international ISO standard. So that's some of the unique features of ISO 27001. So the structure of this the ISO standard, it has normative requirements. And like I said earlier, it's aligned with the structure of Annex SL. Clauses 4 to 10 bear the same titles as the 27001 standard. And Annex A has been restructured. Okay. So not a lot to talk there. We'll move on and talk about some of the key changes to clauses 4 to 10. Okay, so clause number 4.1, I did a study of both the standards, and here are some of the principal updates to clauses 4 to 10 that I could see. Clause number 4.1, the reference was there previously to the earlier version of 31,000. I think it was 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And so that has been updated to reflect the new 31,000 risk management document. And so you are certainly encouraged to use that as a reference when you develop the context of the organization. Okay. Now, clause number 4.2 is also part of the context, and it now requires not only the internal and external issues, but also an analysis of which of the key interested party requirements must be addressed via the ISMS. Okay. So you're going to take the key interested party requirements and make an analysis as to which of these are going to be addressed via the ISMS. Clause number 4.4 now requires planning for all processes and their interactions as part of the ISMS. And this is fundamental to the process approach that I was alluding to earlier. And now the system, the management system, has to be very, very process-centric. And SGS audits are now being revamped to address that. Okay. You also are now required to communicate roles and responsibilities internally within the organization. And that 6.13 references Annex A as a list of possible IS controls. You are most certainly encouraged to add additional controls that are not listed in Annex A. So the Annex A is just something that you could use as a starting point and devolve further controls as necessary. 6.2 requires information security objectives to be monitored. And 6.3 is a brand new clause in 27,001/2022, has to do with management of changes to the ISMS in a planned manner. Again, 7.4, a minor change, requirement for setting up processes for communication is no longer there. And again, 8.1 harps again on the process approach and talks about requirements for setting up criteria for security processes and implementing the processes. Okay. Moving along. Now, therefore, the process approach is going to become fundamental both for the management system as well as the audits that we do. Okay. The requirement to implement plans to achieve information security objectives has been removed from clause 8.1. It was there. So minor changes, we will be looking to see that these changes have all been implemented when we do your audits to 27,001/2022. 9.1, along with the requirement for risk assessments, have always been required to produce comparable and reproducible results. So this is now a requirement when you do your monitoring, measuring, analyzing, and evaluating the effectiveness of the ISMS has to give you comparable and reproducible results. Okay. 9.2, internal audits has been split into separate parts. The first one is about how to conduct these audits at regular intervals, what is involved, what you should do, and so forth. And the second part deals with the audit program. The audit program is what we would look for over a course of a 3-year period or something, over a period of time, how you distribute the internal audits across the audit program. Okay. Then clause 9.3, management review, also split into 3 parts: general, inputs, and results. And the individual bullet items have been updated from the earlier standard. Clause 10.1, 10.2 have now swapped places. 10.1 is now improvement, and 10.2 is non-conformity and corrective actions. So we move along. Structure of Annex A is now known as Information Security Controls Reference, and the controls are aligned with ISO 27002 2022, which is about 150 pages of documentation, which you would be highly encouraged to reference as you implement your ISMS. The Annex A structure, 93 controls total. Um, they are organized into 4 domains, and the 4 domains are organizational controls, people controls, physical controls, technological controls. Okay. The approach is again process-centric rather than control-centric. And we would use the audit planning matrix, which some of you already familiar with that artifact, as a fundamental tool to be able to plan for the auditing of these controls, okay, which is going to be on a highly process-centric basis as such. There are 37 organizational controls. There are 8 people controls. There are 14 physical controls and 34 technological controls. Of these 93, 11 controls are brand new, and we'll talk about them very shortly. 24 controls merge 2 or maybe more earlier controls, consolidates 2+ earlier controls, and the remaining are renamed or renumbered controls. Okay. So, for example, if you're looking at some examples, in the earlier scheme, you had separate controls for asset inventory and asset ownership. And now we have those combined into one control. Similarly, earlier we had in the 2013 standard, management of secret authentication information of users. We had another control for use of secret authentication information, and we had yet another control for password management system. So these 3 earlier controls have all been merged into one control, which is now called authentication information. So 11 new controls, 24 merged controls, and the remaining are renumbered or renamed. And there are some minor changes that I recently noticed. In some places it called for a policy before, and now it just says rules, for example. So those are some of the key changes that have been introduced. We're moving along to a discussion of the 11 new controls. I'll take a little bit of time to explain some of these. The first one is threat intelligence, and threat intelligence has to do with the requirement that information relating to information security threats shall be collected and analyzed to produce threat intelligence. Okay. And the purpose of this particular control was there to raise awareness of the threat environment to enable appropriate mitigation actions. So information collected about strategic, tactical, and operational threats from various sources, and additional information to prevent or reduce the threat impact. Okay. And then it has 5 attributes, which I won't go into right now, but we will talk about attributes in another slide coming up. So moving along to 5.23, A 5.23, information security for use of cloud services. So the requirement is that processes for the entire life cycle of cloud services, acquisition, use, management, and exit should be established. Processes should be established in accordance with the organization's information security requirements. So you want to specify and manage information security for cloud services. We'll have a shared responsibilities between all the parties involved, processes for management of security risks at different stages of use of the cloud service. Okay. and again, 5 attributes. So moving along to 530, ICT readiness. ICT readiness shall be planned, implemented, maintained, and tested based on business continuity objectives and ICT continuity requirements. So ICT is a component of business continuity management. ICT readiness, should I say, is a component of business continuity management and information security management. So BIA is something that would be encouraged: business impact analysis, outcomes and objectives for RTO and RPO, recovery time objective, recovery performance objective. These are dependencies for ICT readiness, and you want to regularly test your ICT continuity plan. So having said that, we move along and talk a little bit about physical security monitoring, which is 7.4 on the screen. So premises shall be continuously monitored for unauthorized physical access. And the purpose is to prevent and deter unauthorized physical access. There will be use of different types of surveillance systems, and you want to address the physical architecture with the surveillance systems architecture. Okay, and this is a control that provides for both confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It is a preventive and detective control, and it provides for protection and defense. At the same time, being in the physical security operational capability. Okay. It's a fairly easy one. Then we come to configuration management, 8.9. Configurations, including security configurations, hardware, software, services, and networks, shall be established, documented, implemented, monitored, and reviewed. So you want to talk about the configurations of system components and system configurations over there. It is a preventive measure. Okay. Moving along, information deletion, reasonably easy to understand. Information stored in information systems, devices, any other storage media shall be deleted when no longer required. So you want to ensure that you prevent the unnecessary exposure of sensitive information any longer than required. Okay. You want to ensure deleted information cannot be recovered, and you want to require third parties, such as cloud service providers, to also delete information in accordance with agreements. And deletion methods will depend on the storage media and are not prescribed. Data masking, again, a reasonably straightforward one to understand. Data masking shall be used in accordance with the organization's topic-specific policy on access control and other policies, taking into account applicable legs and regs in place. So you want to comply with the legal, statutory, regulatory, contractual by granting least access privilege to data, use of data masking, pseudonymization, and anonymization of sensitive data, and disconnect linkages between sensitive information. Okay. Moving along, data leakage prevention, DLP, very well known and high time they introduced it in the control suite. DLP measures shall be applied to systems, networks, and any other devices that process, store, or transmit sensitive information. So fundamentally, I mean, you want to classify, identify, and monitor the journey of sensitive information. You want to block user abilities to store and transmit sensitive information accidentally or deliberately outside the organization, and data ownership and approval of export. Fundamentally, this I have seen in my experience, emails going out of the company that have sensitive information are automatically blocked by certain tools. And that's one way to do that. And another way to implement DLP is to restrict and constrain downloads of sensitive information onto USB sticks, for example, and then those would leave the organization. So those kind of behaviors can be all precluded and prohibited as necessary. We're coming down to A816, which is monitoring activities. So the requirement is that networks, systems, and applications shall be monitored for anomalous behavior and appropriate actions taken to evaluate potential security incidents. Okay. So scope could include monitoring of network traffic, systems, applications for deviations from normal. You want to have a definition of normal as the baseline, and height data, volume, and need for continuous monitoring are use cases for monitoring tools. Okay. So these have to do with the detection of abnormal behavior and potential security incidents. Okay. Wonderful. Moving along to the second last of the new controls, web filtering. And web filtering, again, easy to do. It has to do with the access to external websites shall be managed to reduce exposure to malicious content. So you want to protect from malware and prevent access to external websites with malicious content. And you want to, there's ways to do it by blocking IP addresses or domains, using the earlier control I mentioned of 5.7, threat intelligence, and training and awareness is another way to deal with this specific control. And the last control that we have, which is new, is for secure coding. Secure coding principles shall be applied to software development. So there has to be a process to reduce vulnerabilities in software via governance over secure coding principles that match organizational coding practices, and third-party and open source coverage, end-to-end tamper resistance, security relevant code. So those are the 11 new controls that I wanted to mention to you guys. And then we move on to 27,002, 2022. Comprehensive document over 150 plus pages. Okay, so what is worth mentioning here is that I already covered the controls that are new, merged, and renumbered. So what they have done is, again, the controls are categorized as people controls if they concern individual people, physical controls if they have physical objects, technological, and for each control, they have 5 attributes: control type, information security properties, cybersecurity concepts, operational capabilities, security domains. Now, these 5 attributes are listed within the first section of each of the 93 controls. So each of the 93 controls has control type, information security properties, cybersecurity concepts, operational capabilities, and domains. Okay. And these are mainly used to filter, sort, search, and present controls in different views for different audiences. And if you look at Annex A of ISO 27002, it explains how this can be achieved and provides an example of such a view. Okay. So yeah. So each control has a structure. It has control title, attribute table, the control itself, the purpose, and the guidance documentation and other information. Okay. There is no longer any reference to anything like objective for a group of controls. And they have now introduced the notion of attribute and purpose. Okay. So having said that, we'll move along, and there is a poll.
Yep. So what will your next assessment, what will be your next assessment and timeline? So the more people that answer this question, the better we'll be able to follow up with you to help you map out, you know, when the best time for you to transition is. All right, we'll give it a little bit longer. Only 4% have answered. Oh, there we go. Now 13. Let's get a few more here. And we're about to walk through the timeline process as well to help clarify some of this, but this is key. All right, getting closer and closer. All right. Okay. We'll be following up with you on this.
All right.
All right, transition period. Here you go, Robbie.
Quickly go through this to wrap up the spiel. The standard was published. There's a 3-year transition period ending 31st October 2025 per the IAF transition document, and 27,001 2013 certifications shall expire or be withdrawn at the end of the above transition period. SGS will not issue quotes and proposals to the 2013 standard after Feb 29, 24, and we will not deliver any initial or recertification audits to the old standard after April 30th, 2024. So these have to be timelines to be kept in mind. Validity of ISO 27001 2013 standards, they either expire before or on 31st October 2025. So if a certificate is issued in 2023, then it doesn't go all the way till 2026, which is normally how it would have if there was a 3-year timeline. Okay, so all certificates against the old standard that are issued during the transition period or will expire October 31st, 2025. We will not perform any initial or recertification audits after April 30th, 2024. After the transition period ends, if there are organizations that have expired 27001 2013 certifications, they will be treated as a new client subject to a full initial audit. We have three options. You can do the transition as a special audit, in which case you need a minimum of 1 auditor day. You can do it during a routine surveillance when we will add a minimum of 1 auditor day, or we can do it during a recertification audit when we would add a minimum of a half day. Okay. As far as new certifications are concerned, we've seen a couple of those within SGS. And when we see those, we follow the timelines that are there in the 2013 procedures, the same stage 1, stage 2 surveillance timelines. Okay. So we've done a couple of those, which is good. For larger and more complex organization, we will have to determine the transition audit duration on an individual basis. And as I already mentioned earlier several times, SGS, in line with the requirements of the 2022 standard, are adopting a very process-centric approach. And your SGS auditor will have an initial discussion with you and produce an audit planning matrix, which the term some of you may be familiar with already. So to drive the process-focused auditing approach. Okay. And then next thing, in a transition audit, we would cover a few key things, like, for example, you've done a gap analysis against the 2013 and addressed all the gaps. You have to have updated your statement of applicability to now reference the 2022 standards, and all applicable and excluded controls must be justified. If applicable, you need to update your risk treatment plan, and then, of course, address all the differences in clauses 4 to 10, and then the implementation and effectiveness of the new or changed information security controls. And there will be not a reliance on document review only, especially when reviewing the technological information controls, where we would actually evaluate how each of these controls is implemented and is interpreted and implemented within your ISMS. So we will not take a prescriptive approach to the audits. We will not tell you my way or highway. It's really up to your system to interpret and implement the requirements. And that's what we call business assurance. And so that's fundamental. And then all these timelines that I mentioned are all summarized here in one chart. So that talks about ISO 27001 2022 timelines, ISO 27001 2013, and the 2013 requirements. Okay. All right. So having said that, there is another poll.
All right. What does your team need to transition to the new ISO 27001 2022 standard? So is it training? Is it a transition pre-audit? Is it an understanding of the transition timeline? Just looking to get an idea of what your organization needs to be able to help you get from point A to point B. So we'll give it a few. All right. just going to give this one a little bit longer, Robbie. I could see how many people have.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the SGS Academy. So the SGS Academy is our training academy. So we have a number of different trainings for ISO 27001 2022 to help you with the transition. Just to give you a brief overview, I mean, the good part about training for your organization, especially when you're going through a transition like this, is it's going to change the internal attitudes and behaviors relating to information security. Your organization and the personnel that are involved in your ISMS, they're going to be able to interpret and appreciate the requirements of the standard instead of just sitting here thinking, oh, I have to do this because it's a mandate. They're actually going to have a better understanding of why, you know, these processes and controls are being implemented and how they're making the organization more effective. It's also going to provide a return on investment toward the ISO 27001 2022 implementation and the third-party assessment, because your personnel will be trained to do that implementation and then prepare the organization for the transition. So to give you an idea of some of the courses that we have, so we have, you know, a high-level introduction and awareness ISO 27001 course specific to the transition training. We have an overview course that's just on the transition, and then a second course that dives more into the changes and implementations. That's going to be more specific to the controls. We do have a number of different internal auditor courses, whether it's internal auditor, lead auditor, you know, accredited certification. You know, that's important for any of your internal auditors. If they're going to be doing internal audits to the new requirements, you want to be able to demonstrate competence. And then two, just because ISO 27701, again, that's your privacy information management system, because that's growing so much right now internationally. I just wanted to point out that we do have requirements and implementation and some auditor courses towards that. There is a little QR code on the left. So if you want to be able to have access to our training, our SGS Academy, you just take a picture of that and you'll be able to pop it right up and see the different types of course offerings that we have, you know, even outside of information security. And with that, we have got about 5 minutes. I want to thank everybody for attending. You see that if you want to reach out to Robbie or myself, we've got our contact information here. And then also too, if I don't, there's some people who have submitted some questions that I actually know. I'll be following up with you individually on some of these, but we'll go ahead and answer some of these questions right now. And any of the questions that we don't get to, we'll be sure to follow up with you and make sure we get your response. All right, so I can answer, I think, the first couple ones. Can you perform ISO 27001 2022 transition audits now? So that answer is yes. So we can perform your transition pre-audits, your transition audits, or if you're doing a whole new certification, you don't currently have 27001 right now and you're looking to do initial certification, we can do all of those audits now. The auditors have been trained for a while now, and we've been conducting audits. All right, if currently implementing ISO 27001 2013, do we need to have the certificate in hand by April 30th, 2024? So I've actually gotten this question a lot. So if you're implementing, and again, this is for initial certification though. So if you're newly implementing ISO 27001 2013, you have to be completed with your stage 1 and stage 2, so your initial certification audits, by April 30th, 2024. It's not that you have to have your certificate in hand by that date, but if it's to the old standard, the initial audits must be completed by April 30th, 2024. Robbie, I'll put this to you. Please clarify transition timeline for recertification audits to ISO 27001 2013.
Right. So if we reference the timeline chart that I had over there, this is very clearly documented therein and also in my verbiage provided before. You have to have your recertification audit to 27,001/2013 must be completed. The audit must be completed by April 30th, 2024. After April 30th, 2024, there will be no more recertification and stage 1, stage 2 initial audits against the 2013 standard. Those audits will need to have been completed by that time.
Okay.
That is on April 30th.
Okay. All right, Robbie, I'll put this to you. Let me read what I'm going to say real quick. I'm planning to upgrade. All right, so if we already have a current certificate and plan to upgrade at our next recert audit, will we require a stage 1 and stage 2, or just the recertification audit with the extra day? So I think you kind of just answered
stage 1, no stage 1, no a repeat stage 1, stage 2, not at all. If you're doing it at the next recertification audit, then we would add a minimum of a half day to the audit, and we would conduct the transition audit, and your SGS auditor will apprise you and advise you as to exactly how is the audit going to be structured well before the transition audit. And we are working on, like I've been saying many times, process approach.
Right. Okay. I have a number of questions regarding the differentiation between trainings. And so I'll get back to some of those personnel by email so we can kind of talk through that. But this one are the transition trainings offered as a public training course. So that's a good question. So if you go on to our SGS Academy, you will see that there are, or there will be next week, some public training courses that will be offered in mid-November and mid-December. For the public transition trainings, I believe we'll have some of that for the internal auditor as well. Again, we also offer that training remotely as a private course or on-site as well. So a lot of different options for training there if that's something that your organization is interested in. And then let me see here, keep scrolling. I think we are about out of time, but these are some really good questions that are in here that will take us a little bit more time to respond to. So just hang tight, and we'll be getting back to you in the next week or so, with direct contact and with some responses to your questions. And with that said, I want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you, Dr. Ravi. This was fantastic, and hope everybody learned a little bit more about the transition. Feel free to reach out to us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Feel free to email me, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.